A boy was playing video games on his computer. He had been living this way for 10 years. The next morning, he went downstairs and sat at the table for lunch. His mother asked whether he had found a job yet, since his father couldn't work forever. She also asked what he planned to do once they were no longer around. Hearing that, he became upset and snapped at her, saying she was being annoying. She responded by saying that he always told them, I've got it, but nothing ever changed. Feeling frustrated, he stood up, said he'd lost his appetite, and started walking away. He knew he was behaving badly, but after finishing high school, he had entered an average university and graduated. Things weren't terrible at first, but that's when his problems began. He had tried hard to get a good job even before graduating, but he failed to secure one, which made him lose all motivation. Meanwhile, messages from friends came in saying they had gotten job offers. Whenever they asked him about his situation, he felt down and avoided answering. As he walked upstairs, his mother mentioned their neighbor, who now had a stable job and even a cute child. At that moment, a delivery courier arrived with a package. The boy went to the door and was shocked to see a parcel addressed to him. His mother came over, curious, and asked if he was buying things even though he had no money. He quickly said he must have won a prize again since he hadn't bought anything. He often joined online giveaways to distract himself from the guilt of being unemployed, but sometimes the prizes were adult items he had to hide from his parents. That was why he rushed to receive the package himself. The courier asked if he would sign for it, and the boy noticed the courier giving him a strange look. He wondered if it was because a man in his 30s was at home in the middle of a weekday. Looking around, he saw that others were staring at him more openly than usual. The parcel was small, and his mother glanced at it, wondering if it might be food, then walked away. He went into his room, opened the package, and found a note and a disc. The disc was labeled Village of Fate, and he wondered if it was some sort of game. He read the note, which said he had been chosen to test the game. The note explained that the game used the newest AI technology and was the first to think and act like real humans. He thought that sounded exaggerated. He continued reading the game overview and its rules. One rule said he had to agree not to share anything about the game online. He found it strange that there was no formal contract and that the promise seemed like an ordinary agreement. Another rule stated he must stay connected to the internet while playing, and if the villagers in the game died, he could never play again. That rule surprised him, and he thought it was a bit extreme. Curious, he searched online for Village of Fate, but found nothing. He began wondering if the disk had viruses, so he chose to run it on his old computer instead. If it turned out to be a prank, he figured he could post about it on Reddit. Once he inserted the disk, the title screen appeared. He pressed enter to start, and the first scene came up. He was stunned by the extremely high-definition graphics, better than anything he had ever seen. He saw some villagers traveling in a carriage when monsters suddenly attacked them. He wondered if the monsters were about to chase them down. A girl holding a holy book kept repeating, God of Fate, as if she were praying. He moved his cursor, thinking the monsters would take down the horse. Suddenly, the man driving the carriage tried to defend it, and a bright light shone from the holy book. Within moments, the entire screen glowed. Confused about what had happened, the next scene showed the villagers standing in a forest, chatting happily. He figured this must be where the real game starts. He moved the cursor over the characters and was able to see their background information. The man driving the carriage was named Gams, a 26-year-old swordsman. The girl with the holy book was Kem, a 19-year-old priestess who believed in the god of fate. She was Gams's younger sister. He noticed they didn't resemble each other and wondered if the game was made in Japan, thinking it must have cost a lot to create. With such high-quality CG, he thought it should be trending online, but decided to look into that later. He wanted to read about the other characters first. After checking the remaining 3, he realized they were all from the same family. Finding that interesting, he wondered what the game controls were. So he looked for the instruction paper again. He also noticed the game wasn't fully voiced, since the dialogue appeared as text. In the game, Gams apologized to the others, saying that protecting the village was his responsibility, but all he managed to do during the monster attack was help them escape. Carol, his younger sister, excitedly asked about the bright light they had seen. Kem, Gams's other sister, told Carol that Gams was her older brother. The boy playing the game noticed that Gams was handsome, strong, and had a pretty sister, so he assumed Gams was the protagonist. Gams then told Kem she was being childish toward Carol, and Kem apologized. Carol giggled, amused that her sister was getting scolded. The boy found himself starting to enjoy the game because he liked the characters' personalities and backstories. Layla and Rodaz, the remaining characters, also asked about the light. Kem explained that the mysterious light had come from the Bible she held. Then the boy received instructions telling him he had to write a prophecy for the villagers each day. He had now become the god in the game, responsible for guiding the villagers to a prosperous life. Reading the instructions, he was stunned and didn't fully grasp them at first. He guessed the game could only interpret simple words or short sentences, so he wrote one sentence, thinking that even partial recognition would be impressive. After writing the prophecy and pressing enter, light appeared in the Bible. Kem opened it and started reading, announcing that they had received a prophecy from the god of fate. Everyone became excited and began praying. Since only Kem could read, they asked her to recite the prophecy. Kem read aloud instructions to gather wood and secure a place to stay, written in a prophetic style. The boy was completely shocked. He leaned back from his chair in disbelief. He had not expected it to work so flawlessly. Seeing the characters understand and react to what he wrote amazed him, and he couldn't believe that technology like this existed. He wondered if the characters were simply following pre-programmed actions, but then he noticed them discussing how to gather wood and prepare a place to sleep. Rodaz mentioned they could cut wood from the forest, but they couldn't use it immediately because it needed time to dry. Kem was surprised by this, and the boy playing the game was also shocked, since he didn't know that either. Rodaz explained how the drying process worked, and Kem, feeling guilty, admitted she had never learned about it. The boy felt the same way, realizing he didn't know much about it either. Rodaz reassured everyone, saying there must be a reason behind God's instructions, so it wouldn't hurt to cut the trees and let them dry. With that, they gathered tools and went to the trees. The boy realized that Gams and Rodaz were handling the woodcutting, while the girls searched for edible plants. He discovered he could use the mouse scroll wheel to zoom in and out. When he zoomed out, he saw a long, narrow area in the distance and guessed it was the path they had used to escape earlier. He began wondering how to progress in the game and whether it was actually running in real time. He found it hard to believe and thought such a game couldn't possibly exist. Then a message appeared explaining fate points. These points were earned based on how grateful the villagers felt toward the god of fate, meaning him. He saw that he had 97 points, and they could be used to perform miracles. The instructions said that the more villagers there were, the more fate points he would earn, and making them happy would also increase his points. Curious, he checked the list of miracles. Some included helping the escaped villagers reunite or making a traveling peddler or doctor appear. He realized he could influence people's destinies, though he couldn't control them directly. However, he could control things like the weather, which made him feel powerful, almost godlike. Unsure where to spend his limited points, he decided to listen carefully to the villagers to decide. He scrolled to Gams and Rodaz and noticed Rodaz trying to talk to Gams while Gams stayed quiet. Curious what the girls were discussing, he moved the screen to them and saw they were talking about food. He thought summoning a peddler might help since they could buy food. The villagers mentioned they had only 2 weeks of food left, and he considered instructing Gams to investigate the area tomorrow. But he hesitated, unsure if sending their only fighter away was a good idea. Instead, he thought about using Carol, who wasn't doing much, to explore and expand the visible map. Just then, Carol picked up a mushroom and Layla told her to drop it because it was poisonous. Seeing that, the boy worried that careless actions might lead to the villagers' deaths, which would make him feel guilty. He wondered if there was another miracle that could help. He noticed one called Familiar and wondered if it might expand the map area. Then he became stressed when he saw that even a simple dog or cat cost 300 fate points, which he didn't have. Lowering his head, overwhelmed by a game, he saw another way to increase fate points, a payment system. He realized he could get 10 fate points for 1,000 yen, which annoyed him because he wasn't earning money. He calculated that if he spent 20,000 yen he could get a cat or dog, and with enough points, he could ensure the villagers lived comfortably. But when he checked his bank account, he saw he only had 10,852 yen. He began thinking about selling his books, games, and unopened giveaway prizes online to get more money. After thinking it over, he returned his attention to the game and saw that the villagers were getting ready to sleep at 9 o'clock. Rodas asked Gams why he wasn't going to bed, and Gams answered that someone needed to stay awake in case a monster appeared. Rodas reassured him, saying that with God's protection, no monsters would come near them. The boy realized just how much trust the villagers placed in him, yet he knew he didn't actually have those kinds of powers. He considered telling them that their God had limits and wasn't all-powerful, but worried that doing so might weaken their faith and appreciation toward him. He began looking into how wood was processed in the game and thought about how long it had been since he cared about anything like that. Recently, all he did was watch entertainment videos or scroll through funny posts on Reddit. He wondered if he hadn't been maybe he could give the villagers a more comfortable and easier life. Suddenly, he stood up, realizing he was regretting his past because of a game. He thought games were supposed to be fun, not something that made him feel depressed. As he sat down again, he felt a sharp pain in the scar on his stomach, bringing back a painful memory. He remembered when his younger sister had been in danger, and he got into a fight with a boy on the street. That boy stabbed him in the stomach with a knife. At that moment, he had left something important behind and ran toward it, marking the beginning of everything going downhill. With sadness in his eyes, he stood up from his chair, thinking he just wanted to lose himself in games because he felt like he had nothing else left to do. The next morning, he opened his eyes and realized it was already bright outside. He remembered searching how wood was processed the previous night, but he had fallen asleep without noticing. He checked the time. It was 7 a.m. He couldn't remember the last time he woke up so early. He walked to his computer and saw that everyone in the game was already awake and working. It hit him that the villagers truly lived in real time. He began thinking about what prophecy he should give them next, but his thoughts were interrupted by his stomach growling. He realized he was hungry and remembered he didn't eat dinner the previous night because he had been too focused on the game. Looking around, he saw empty snack packages, realizing even those were gone. So he went downstairs, wondering if the fridge had anything left. As he got closer to the kitchen, he heard his family having breakfast at the dining table. Ever since the incident with his sister, he had a huge argument with his father about getting a job, and they hadn't spoken directly since then. For a moment, he thought about walking in, greeting them with a smile, and asking if he could eat with them, but then he found the idea ridiculous. They were eating to fuel themselves for the day, working hard, while he had no job and nothing to show. How could he face them? Instead, he turned around, went back to his room, and started doing some muscle exercises. He remembered how he had run away that time and felt he needed to counter the weakness still inside him. While working out, he glanced at the computer screen and noticed Carol helping with the others. They all looked happier than he was, even though it was just a game. He thought that even though it was virtual, they were living more fulfilling lives than him. Feeling guilty, he decided he had to warn them not to depend too much on a god as incapable as him, so he wrote the day's prophecy. Kem announced they had received the prophecy, and the villagers gathered around her eager to hear it. After she finished reading it, there was a long silence. The boy became nervous, wondering if they were disappointed in their god, who seemed to be making excuses. He regretted giving them such a message, but then Kem broke the silence, saying how amazing it was that their god still watched over them. Rodas added that perhaps their god had weakened because of fighting devils. They took the prophecy in a positive way, and his faith points rose to 110. He realized the points were increasing too slowly. At that pace, he wouldn't be able to improve their lives anytime soon. He overheard them talking about how uncomfortable it was to sleep in the wagon and how they needed a defense wall or fence to protect themselves from monsters. Hearing their hardships, he wished he had more points to help them, but he couldn't waste the few he had. The only way to earn more points was through the in-game payment system. He had already listed his unopened items for sale and expected to get 20,000 to 30,000 yen from them. He looked at his books and thought about selling them to a shop for more money. The problem was he hadn't gone outside for months, but he knew that if he didn't make these sacrifices, the villagers might be destroyed, and he would never be able to play the game again. After thinking everything through, he decided to go outside. He put on nicer clothes, realizing they still fit since he hadn't gained any weight. As a child, he imagined becoming a more refined adult in his 30s, thinking it would happen naturally. Now, he promised himself he would continue the game tomorrow. Just as he was about to leave, he saw Carol fall in the game and hurt herself. It saddened him to see her struggling. Despite being injured, she picked up her bundle of wood and kept going. He also noticed everyone looked tired, realizing it had been a harder day than usual for them. Determined, he grabbed his bag of books and thought that he would do his best as well. As he approached the door, his mother, surprised, asked if he was heading out and wondered what was going on. He simply said he would be back soon. He took his bicycle and started riding. People looked at him strangely, judging him as he passed. Thinking of the villagers in the game, he pedaled faster and arrived at the bookstore. Once inside, he looked around, wondering if he could find a book that would help him manage villagers. He noticed a book about different worlds but realized it didn't exactly fit the game's situation. Besides, he couldn't afford to buy something new. After selling his old books, he stepped outside and noticed a bakery he used to visit with his family. He decided to go in and look at the desserts. He bought 4 puddings and went back home. When he handed them to his mother, she smiled and asked if they were for her. He said he bought enough for everyone and quickly hurried to his room, feeling embarrassed. He thought he shouldn't feel proud over doing just one small kind act, wondering what he was doing with his life at his age. After spending 20,000 yen, he finally had 310 fate points. He watched the villagers cook dinner and sit together. He wondered what kind of miracle he should use next. There was a feature that let him review past conversations, but he felt uneasy about it, thinking it was like spying. Still, he decided to try it. When he clicked it, he could suddenly hear their earlier conversations from while he was gone. They talked about the nice weather, and Layla mentioned wanting to bathe in the river. Kem pointed out that there were many men around. Layla winked and joked that she didn't mind being seen since her husband and daughter were used to it. She also teased that Gams wouldn't be interested in an old woman like her. She added that Carol wouldn't mind if Gams saw her either, so everything was fine. After hearing this, he thought he didn't need to worry too much about Layla or Carol, but Kem's brother complex was more intense than he expected. Suddenly, he read that Layla was wondering about the swarm of monsters that attacked their village, mentioning how the villagers were scattered instantly. Yoshio was confused, unsure what day she meant. As he kept listening, he realized they were referring to a village made of beautiful stone. Curious, he gathered more information and learned that there had once been nearly 100 villagers. After the monster attack, they were all forced to flee, each escaping on horse-drawn wagons like the one they were using now. That's when he understood the purpose of the miracle called Reunite Villagers. It was meant to bring together those who had escaped and been separated. As he was thinking about reuniting them, his mother called out that dinner was ready. He went to the dining room and saw his father at the table. It was unusual to see him home early. Ever since he became AET, they saw each other face to face only a few times a month. He tried to start a conversation, but his father didn't seem interested. Instead, his father asked if Sayuki, his younger sister, was working overtime. Unlike him, Sayuki was hardworking and entered the field she wanted. She often said working late didn't bother her. Their mother then mentioned receiving handmade tsukemono from Okiko and asked if he wanted some. She said the weather was good, so she had taken a walk in the park and met Okiko, and afterward, they went shopping together. Okiko was an elderly landlady who lived in a large, old house nearby. When he was young, she often gave them candy. He realized the only reason he wasn't thrown out of the house despite being NET was because his father worked hard and had a stable income. After finishing his meal, he thanked his parents and stood up. His mother told him to take a pudding and asked his father if he wanted dessert too, saying their son had bought it. His father, sounding uninterested, said he would have some. Feeling disappointed, he went back to his room and checked on the villagers. He saw that everyone except Gams had gone to the wagons. Gams stood out as a reliable person with quiet strength, much like his own father. Kem could use healing magic, but she wasn't suited for fighting, so both she and the villagers depended heavily on Gams. There was an option to summon more people, but it cost too many points. There was a cheaper option to summon a random person, but it felt risky. What if the random person was dangerous or a criminal? He thought it was safer not to risk it. He also wanted to save points for a familiar, so he decided to hold off for now. Realizing how stressed the game made him, he thought it would be better to sleep and continue tomorrow. Just as he was getting up from his chair, a notification suddenly appeared. He quickly warned everyone to wake up. Kem, sounding panicked, asked what was happening. Gams told her that monsters were attacking and warned everyone not to leave the wagon no matter what. Rodas told his wife and daughter to stay inside the wagon because it was dangerous. Gams, staying calm, reassured everyone that he would handle the situation and asked Kem to be ready with her healing magic. Yoshio felt extremely nervous. The area was too dark to see the monsters, and he had no idea where they were coming from. Suddenly, 2 wild dogs appeared. Yoshio knew Gams was strong, but with 2 enemies, he grew even more worried. He considered using a miracle to help, but before he could act, the monsters attacked Gams. Gams fought fiercely with his sword and managed to kill both. After the battle, he sat on a log, exhausted. His sister ran to him with a smile, asking if he was all right. But suddenly, Gams collapsed, leaving everyone frozen in shock. Yoshio screamed his name, realizing it wasn't a perfect victory. His sister started crying, holding him tightly. She panicked and shouted that Gamsa's body was getting cold. Outside the screen, Yoshio tried to understand what was happening. Rodas checked Gamsa's pulse and tried to calm Kem down. He noticed bite marks on Gamsa's arm, realizing the monster bite had poisoned him. Rodas asked Kem if she could use antidote magic. Yoshio felt relieved for a moment, thinking her healing magic would fix it. But Kem said she hadn't learned antidote magic yet. Desperately, Rodas asked if they had any antidotes in their supplies, but Gams weakly shook his head. Carol stood there in shock, unable to process it. Kem, crying, begged her brother not to leave her. In her desperation, she shouted at God, begging for help to save her brother and promising she would do anything. Yoshio panicked, unsure what to do. If Gams died, it would all be over, and he wondered if there was any way he could save him. Clenching his fists, he tried to stay calm, reminding himself he was the god in the game. He remembered there was an option to reverse the situation and searched frantically for it. Instead, he saw a miracle called Traveling Doctor shows up that cost 300 fate points. He hesitated, wondering if he should use it. What if the doctor didn't arrive in time? It was a risky choice. He shouted in frustration, worried about what might happen. Suddenly, his mother yelled from downstairs, telling him to quiet down. Realizing how loud he had been, he thought that even if a doctor showed up in the middle of the night, it might look suspicious to the villagers. After thinking a moment, Yoshio decided to use the miracle. A traveling doctor suddenly appeared in the village. Kem, shocked and angry, demanded to know who he was. The doctor calmly told them not to worry and introduced himself as a traveling physician. Yoshio smiled, thinking it was natural for them to doubt him. To ease their suspicions, he sent another prophecy, and Kem, surprised to receive a prophecy so late, read it with gratitude toward God. The doctor then asked to examine Gams, and everyone watched nervously. He took out an antidote and applied it to Gamsa's wound. Gradually, Gams began to improve. His pain eased and his body temperature returned to normal. Everyone was relieved and happy to see Gams recovering. Yoshio, feeling calmer, even wondered whether the doctor was male or female. Meanwhile, Rodas began reading the prophecy aloud. In it, Yoshio explained that he guided the doctor to them and reminded them that although their hardships would continue, they should never forget that their god was watching over them. Yoshio, trying to sound like a real god, wondered how it sounded. Seeing the villagers' relieved expressions, he felt confident he had done well. The next day, the girls were collecting food ingredients, while Rodas practiced with a sword to protect everyone. Suddenly, a rabbit ran through the bushes, startling Rodas so much that he fell. Meanwhile, the doctor was preparing herbs for treating Gams. Kem asked the doctor why he was in that area, and he explained that his family had been doctors for generations, and this region, called the Forbidden Forest, was full of monsters but also rich in herbs. The previous night, after finishing gathering herbs and preparing to set up camp, he had seen a bright light in the distance. At first, he wasn't sure whether to approach it, but eventually, he decided to follow it. Kem smiled and said it must have been God guiding him. The doctor answered that while he and his family valued nature above all and weren't particularly believers, it could have been God's doing. Yoshio realized the doctor was agnostic. He acknowledged the possibility of a God but didn't fully believe in one. Kem asked if he would leave soon. The doctor replied that he couldn't abandon his patient even though the worst part was over. He then asked if he could stay longer, as he had some spare time. With a cheerful smile, Kem said he was welcome to stay as long as he liked. But she explained they didn't have proper shelter, asking if he was fine with that. Yoshio smiled, thinking it was good to have the doctor stay, but he also realized the problem. Since the doctor was with them, the wagon was full, meaning someone might have to sleep outside. Even though Gams was saved, it would still take a few days for him to fully heal. Yoshio realized they needed a safe place to live, so he began thinking about how best to use his fate points. Suddenly, the doctor mentioned a nearby cave that was once used by miners. It could protect them from wind and rain, and they might even find leftover tools. Yoshio felt relieved that the doctor knew such a place. Rodaz, excited, asked the doctor to lead them there. Yoshio saw that the cave was only 5 minutes away, so they could easily return later to gather more wood. They reached the cave and found a large door at the entrance. The doctor said it was probably used for transporting goods since it seemed like the main gate. Yoshio thought it must have been a mining site. When they opened the door, a vast space appeared inside. Everyone looked amazed. Yoshio was also surprised. It was much larger than he imagined. Although a bit dirty, several rooms were scattered throughout. He noticed everyone was so busy exploring their new home that they weren't paying attention to the doctor. Kem had placed Gams on a bed and held his hand, telling him they had safely reached a new place. There was spring water nearby and areas that could be used for cooking. The girls immediately prepared to clean the area. Yoshio felt deeply grateful to the doctor for helping them find shelter. While the doctor continued treating Gams, Kem went outside and asked everyone to stay quiet so they wouldn't wake him. She suggested cleaning the place so that Gams would be surprised when he woke up. Layla told Rodaz to remove anything unnecessary, and he agreed, saying he would put those items in the corner. During the cleaning, Carol noticed there were 4 rooms. Smiling, she shouted that she would make Big Brother Gams's room her own, saying one bed was enough since she would sleep with him. Kem, watching her, questioned in her mind why Gams would share a room with Carol instead of her. She thought Gams had spoiled Carol too much. Yoshio was a bit worried about the dynamic between Carol and Kem, but figured they generally got along as villagers. He then thought about how they could finally begin building a village, now that they had a place that could be turned into a livable settlement. He noticed it was already noon and realized he hadn't eaten anything yet. Feeling hungry, he decided to get something to eat. Just as he stepped out of his room, he suddenly saw his sister Sayuki walking out of hers as well. He was startled and asked Sayuki if she was on break. She answered that she just wanted to go downstairs to eat and, sounding annoyed, told him to get out of the way. He replied that he was heading to the first floor as well, but she warned him not to use the bathroom there. Hearing that irritated him even more, but ever since that incident, she hadn't treated him the same way. He didn't say anything and simply assured her he wouldn't use it. After finishing his meal, he returned to his room, thinking about his sister. He remembered how close they used to be, often going out to relax together. He wondered whether they would still be friendly siblings if that incident had never happened. A pain shot through his stomach, reminding him that he needed to move on, because although he regretted things now, he knew there was nothing he could change. He decided to check on the villagers and saw they had cleaned their surroundings very well. Rodaz asked Layla where Kem was, and she said Kem was looking after Gams. Carol said she wanted to go too, but Rodaz told her to leave them alone for the moment. Smiling, he suggested she stay with her father and join him in exploring the cave. She agreed and added that once her big brother recovered, she would give him a tour. Meanwhile, Kem entered the room and asked the doctor if she could look after her brother, urging the doctor to rest. The doctor agreed, saying the effects of the poison had subsided and she would take Kem up on her offer. She instructed Kem to call her immediately if anything unusual happened. Kem thanked her and held her brother's hand, letting him know she was there. Yoshio felt happy seeing that Gams was getting better. Suddenly, a dream box appeared above Gams. When he clicked it, the entire display changed. The scene shifted, and Yoshio saw a younger version of Gams. He was surrounded by many friends inviting him to go out drinking. Gams politely refused, saying he was heading home because his sister was waiting for him. Yoshio was surprised to see Gams at such an innocent point in his life. When Gams reached home, he found his father drinking heavily. Annoyed, he commented that he was drunk again and threw a bottle at him. He then handed his father a pot filled with coins, which he had promised in exchange for watching Kem while Gams worked. Gams asked where Kem was and went downstairs, only to find her lying there in terrible condition. Shocked, he asked how many days she had gone without food. Yoshio felt the same shock, wondering if this was child abuse. Gams became even angrier, saying he should have left sooner. He began to walk away, but his father tried to stop him. His father claimed he had just been careless because he was drunk and promised he would keep his word from now on. But Gams lifted his sister and angrily told his father to stand aside unless he wanted to die. Gams then left the house, and Kem asked where they were going. He replied, "Anywhere but home." Kem pointed out that if they didn't hurry, their father would be furious. Gams told her they would never see him again, so there was nothing to fear. Kem then wondered aloud if their mother hated her because she was a bad child who always got scolded. But Gams shouted that this wasn't true. They were the ones who were bad. He reminded her that their parents had once said they would sell her because she was useless, so at least she would be of some use in the end. Yoshio realized their situation had been far worse than he imagined. Gams told Kem not to think of them as parents anymore, promising to take care of her and asking her to live with him, have fun, and be happy. Kem smiled and hugged him, saying she loved her big brother. The screen returned to the present, and Yoshio understood why Kem had such a strong brother complex. With a brother like that, it made sense she depended on him so much. Suddenly, Gams opened his eyes and asked if he had made his little sister worry. Tears streamed down Kem's face as she hugged him, relieved to hear his voice. Everyone else appeared at the door, delighted that Gams was awake. Yoshio also felt relieved, thinking that at last, everyone was happy. He knew that everyone relied on Gams. He was a naturally admired character. He was also handsome and strong, and Yoshio was sure that the bond between Gams and Kem would remain strong forever. As he thought about his own relationship with his sister, he suddenly noticed tears running down his cheeks. He was stunned to realize he was crying. He laughed softly, wondering if his regrets were affecting him that deeply. He thought to himself that he genuinely wanted to change. From his window, he saw his father and sister leaving the house together. As they stepped outside, she asked her father whether he was wearing the necktie she had given him. He smiled and asked if it looked strange. She smiled back, saying it suited him perfectly. After watching them go, he returned to his computer and saw Layla preparing a meal with Carol helping her, while the doctor and Gams were patrolling outside. Looking around, he felt happy to see that they had placed all the necessary tools and furnishings for comfortable living. It had been 3 days since they moved into the cave, and their lifestyle had improved significantly. He felt it had been worth using that miracle. Meanwhile, Gams encountered a large boar. The boar charged at him, but Gams dodged. Suddenly, an arrow struck the boar, knocking it down. The archer who fired it was the doctor, Malus. Malus walked toward Gams and reminded him not to overexert himself while still recovering. Yoshio checked the doctor's name and noticed there was no background info besides his name, Malus. Not only was he skilled at potion making, but he was also a master archer, making him an excellent partner for Gams. Furthermore, Malus could use plant-based magic, and he had been the one to guide them to the cave. Yoshio hoped Malus would remain with the group, but under the doctor's profile, there was only a box labeled "Secret" and nothing else. Yoshio found it odd that Malus hadn't officially joined the group yet, especially since he had already spent 30,000 yen on the game. He realized the game was far more complicated than he first assumed. Afterward, they returned to the cave, where Kem thanked them for their patrol. Carol cheerfully welcomed them home. Gams and Malus handed over the boar meat they had hunted, and Layla was delighted that they would have meat for dinner. However, she mentioned they were low on seasoning and salt, which were essential for cooking and preserving. Yoshio found this troubling. He realized that although the area around the cave had plenty of natural produce, they still needed a stable source of food, like a farm. He considered using a miracle to call a peddler to buy seeds and supplies. But another miracle, golem, caught his attention. Golems were large, human-shaped figures made of stone, and he could control one directly with his controller, which excited him. But summoning a golem cost 700 fate points, equivalent to 70,000 yen in real money. As a NT, Yoshio found that absolutely impossible, especially since he only had 160 points. He earned 10 points per day from the villagers, meaning he would need 2 to 3 months to gather enough points. He thought about how he had already used all his savings for the game. Watching the villagers happily enjoying their dinner made him feel a bit more at ease. He stood from his chair to make himself a cup of coffee, feeling both content and concerned. After preparing his coffee, he returned with the cup and watched the villagers carrying out their tasks. He noticed Kem and Gams working on something together over the past few days, and he wondered what it might be. Kem said it was almost finished and asked Gams if it looked disrespectful. They revealed what they had been creating. It was a statue. Gams reassured her, saying what mattered most was their sincerity, and he was sure their feelings were reaching the god who watched over them. Malis asked if the statue was meant to represent their god, and Kem confirmed it, explaining that while the craftsmanship was rough, they needed a place to worship and give offerings. Yoshio realized the statue was for him, but it was carved so crudely that it was hard to tell whether it represented a male or female. He began wondering about the god of fate's gender. As Kem offered some fruits to the statue, the offerings disappeared before them. Yoshio realized that since God existed in their world, it wasn't surprising that offerings would vanish. He also saw that his fate points increased because of the offering. Reading through the instructions, he learned that offerings also contributed to increasing his points. Yoshio decided he should talk to the villagers about offering things they didn't need, but he didn't want to burden them or seem demanding. So he sent a prophecy, suggesting they could offer spare items to him, explaining that he could convert their goods and feelings into miracles. He was happy with how he worded it. It didn't sound like begging or ordering. The villagers appeared delighted as they read the message, their faces glowing with smiles. Yoshio, however, felt a bit uneasy about their innocence. He thought that in modern Japan, people like them might easily fall for scams or harmful religions. Then again, he realized they might already be involved in something like that without realizing it. The next day, Yoshio saw Gams and Rodas offering him a large log. He realized that they could offer even large items like that, and it struck him how happy they seemed while presenting offerings to their god. As the villagers prayed and offered their gifts, he noticed it was already afternoon. Time passed quickly while he played the game. Suddenly his mother called out, saying he had received a package. He went downstairs and saw it came from the village of fate. Thinking it might be reference material they forgot to send, he muttered to himself. His mother, curious, opened the package before he could stop her. Yoshio told her not to open it carelessly, wondering what it might be. When she opened it, they found odd-looking fruits inside. They looked like pears but were red like apples. Yoshio was stunned. These were the same fruits the villagers had offered him the day before. His mother, assuming they were exotic fruits he had ordered, said they would eat them for dessert that night. He caught the scent of the fruit, noticing a slight citrus smell. It didn't feel artificial at all. Thinking back on how the villagers enjoyed them, he decided to take a bite. To his surprise, it was the most delicious fruit he had ever tasted. He figured it might be something added by the game creators, perhaps a common fruit in some foreign country. Either way, he had no complaints, since it tasted wonderful. Feeling satisfied, he returned to his computer and wrote a new prophecy for the villagers. In it, he thanked them for the fruits and told them they didn't need to offer food unless they had extra. He reminded them to prioritize themselves first. Smiling, he thought that once he had saved enough points to summon a golem, he could help them even more. Suddenly, his mother yelled for him to come downstairs, and from her tone, he could tell she was irritated. He hurried down and found a log at the door, stamped with the village of fate symbol. His mother asked what he was going to do with it, but he was stunned. It was the same log the villagers had offered him the previous day. He thought to himself that the joke was going too far. He tried dragging the log but quickly realized how heavy it was. His mother asked what he planned to do with it, so he told her he would move it to the garden, pretending she had asked him to use it for muscle training. As he struggled with the weight, he thought about how hard Gams and Rodas must work doing such heavy tasks. He found it hard to take any of this seriously and contemplated complaining to the game company. But when he checked the details, he couldn't find any contact information. The return address showed Hokkaido, which stunned him. He couldn't believe they had gone so far as to send something from Hokkaido. He searched online for information about the company but found nothing. He even looked up the return address and found a tiny building, making him doubt such a small business could develop a game of this quality. He started thinking that maybe the development happened elsewhere, but the company was extremely secretive. In any case, he couldn't afford to travel there, nor did he have the courage to confront them. So he sat there, wondering what to do with the log. The next day, he received a cooler from the villagers, filled with fresh monster meat they had hunted. He was completely shocked, and his mom was just as astonished when she saw it. She angrily asked if he was spending money on something suspicious. Unable to explain clearly, he tried telling her he had come up with an idea to help revitalize a village, and the villagers appreciated it so much that they sent him gifts regularly. To his surprise, she was thrilled and thought it was amazing, and he was even more shocked that she believed him. He handed her the boar meat and suggested she cook it. She stared at it, confused, wondering how she was supposed to prepare something like that. From then on, he began receiving daily packages from the Village of Fate. These included various fruits, monster meats, and even light crystals from the game. He also kept getting logs and wondered whether these items could be bought somewhere, but he had a theory. Maybe the game was designed for rich players, where valuable items were given as tributes over time. Perhaps he had been mistakenly chosen as a test player. One evening, his mother prepared a sautéed dish using the meat they had received. While they were eating, she asked if he could get more of those fruits because she felt healthier after eating them. He told her he would ask the villagers. She mentioned that even Sayuki liked the meat. His father added that the meat tasted amazing, more natural than what they usually bought. He said the texture and flavor made it seem like genuine, high-quality meat. Hearing his father talk so much reassured Yoshio that he truly liked it, as his father rarely spoke that enthusiastically. The next day, Yoshio was in the garden, trying to cut wood with a saw. His father watched him struggle, seeing how hard it was. His father offered to show him how to do it correctly. Yoshio suspected his father was helping because he didn't want the neighbors to see him struggling and feel embarrassed. After showing him the proper method, his father handed the saw back and told him to try again. From then on, his father began advising him regularly, and by last weekend, they had even planned to use the logs together to repair the garden fence. He also began thinking about teaching the villagers how to cook meat. His mother had taught him a lot about cooking, so he was fairly good at it. It even became a habit for him to have lunch with the villagers. One evening, while he was searching the fridge, his sister suddenly came home. He greeted her, though hesitantly, and she was surprised to hear him speak, responding that she was glad to be back. Later, sitting in his room, he reflected on how he was able to talk more with his family now, all because of the Village of Fate. He started to wonder whether he was the one helping the villagers, or if they were actually the ones helping him. Meanwhile, Gams had finished building a fence around the cave to keep everyone safe. After he finished, Kem asked whether monsters could jump over it. He reassured her, telling her not to worry. If any managed to get past it, he and Malice would take care of them. He added that the only real problem was the number of enemies, like the last time, so stressing over it wouldn't help. Then he suggested they head inside. Yoshio felt that they seemed more confident about their defenses now, but he also sensed that something was strange. Despite their situation improving, they all appeared more tense. They were trying to stay calm, but their uneasiness was clear. He noticed that everyone sighed whenever they looked at the wooden calendar. The last day of the month had a marking, and he wondered if something significant was supposed to happen then. During dinner, Carol asked why everyone looked so gloomy. Rodas told her that Papa and Mama were fine and always close to each other, but she pointed out that everyone sighed whenever they saw the calendar. Rodas admitted they didn't want to worry her, then asked if she remembered how they always told her to stay inside and sleep early on the last day of the month. She nodded, saying she remembered because the adults always looked scared and got angry easily that day. She then wondered out loud, if there were so many gods, why were there only 7 gods and 12 months in a year? Shouldn't there be 5 more gods? Rhodas smiled at how sharp she was and explained that the 7 gods originally corresponded to the 7 days of the week: light, moon, fire, water, nature, lightning, and earth. Yoshio realized their world had a system similar to Monday through Sunday, tied to those elemental gods. He understood the system better now, realizing he was one of the gods connected to those 7. This helped him better understand his role. He learned that conflicts had occurred among the gods, ending in a huge battle. During the first 31 days, freezing winds struck. On the 120th day, the god of nature rose above the others. On the 182nd day, the gods of water and lightning clashed violently. Then, on the 243rd day, the god of fire erupted in anger. It took a full 365 days for the fighting to end. As a result of that long war, the victorious faction of gods descended into this world. Those gods ruled over the 7 days of the week, and the periods when their power was strongest became known as the 7 chief gods. She asked what happened to the defeated gods, and Rhodas explained that they were labeled evil and banished underground. But they continued gathering power and resurfaced once a month, granting their strength to monsters. This happened on the last day of the month, known as Evil God's Temptation. Kem added that this was why leaving the house on that day was dangerous. The monsters grew stronger and became vicious. Yoshio finally understood the cross mark on that date. He realized there were 10 days left before that day arrived, just like in the real world where it was November 20th. In the game, it was also the 20th, with 10 days until the month ended. He thought that with the fate points he currently had, he might not be able to protect the villagers. It was midnight, and he saw Rhodas sitting alone at the table. Layla appeared and asked him what was wrong. He said he couldn't stop thinking about Evil God's temptation. He mentioned the attack from before and confessed his fear of losing his family. Seeing Rhodas trembling, Yoshio wondered what happened during the previous Evil God's temptation. 3 weeks earlier, Carol had been sleeping when she woke up suddenly and ran to find her parents. They were in the kitchen, and her mother told her to wash her face. She went to the well, washed her face, and felt refreshed. She realized she forgot a towel, and Kem appeared, asking if she had just woken up. Carol agreed and asked where her big brother was. Kem said he was watching the village gate. Carol ran off, saying she wouldn't care if her big brother wasn't there. Kem didn't like that response, and when she saw Carol running, she tried to stop her. Carol returned home and asked her mom if she'd heard Kem's voice. Kem said she didn't know and then began eating breakfast. After eating, Carol ran outside. Her mother asked where she was going, and Carol said she was going to find her big brother. Her mother tried to stop her, but Carol ran off without listening. She passed through the market, greeting people. Someone asked if Rhodas and Layla were home, and she answered before running further. Then she came across a huge wall and spotted Gams. She ran toward him and hugged him tightly. Gams told her she shouldn't be outside that day. Curious, she asked why, and he explained that it was a special day and pointed out that no other children were around. She agreed and asked if he had built the huge wall. He shook his head and said that decades earlier a massive war had taken place, and the wall served as a stronghold. After the war, refugees had settled there and the city flourished. Carol asked if the walls protected them from enemies, and Gams confirmed, just as her mother arrived. Her mother scolded her gently, telling her to stop running. A soldier approached Gams and asked if he knew them. Gams said they were neighbors who had always been kind to him and his sister. The soldier's subordinate noted that the children didn't seem frightened at all. Gams explained that since the town had been built, crossing the walls had always been possible. Layla apologized for Carol's interruption and said she would scold her later, but Gams told her not to be too hard. Then they left. Once they returned home, Carol asked if something special was happening, like a festival. Layla said it would have been nice if it were, but they could have a feast the next day. Carol was happy to hear that. Then Rhodas and Layla exchanged uneasy looks. Rhodas, looking out the window, said he had packed everything in the wagon just in case. Layla nodded, and Rodaz added that he hoped nothing would happen and prayed they could get through the day safely. Outside, far more monsters than usual had gathered, and different types had formed a large group attacking together. Gams and his soldiers fought back, launching spears and arrows. One of Gam's men shouted for everyone to follow Gam's lead, emphasizing that they must prevent the monsters from entering. Suddenly, a monster jumped over the wall and attacked a soldier. Everyone was shocked, and soon more monsters began leaping into the city. Chaos exploded across the village and inside their home. Rodaz, Layla, and Carol clung to each other fearfully as the situation grew worse. Suddenly, Gams and Kem appeared at their home, asking if they were safe. They said they were okay, and Gams told them not to worry. Both he and Kem were covered in blood, Gams from fighting and Kem from healing the injured. Rodaz asked how the battle was going, and Gams admitted things looked hopeless. He said the gates had fallen and a horde of monsters was flooding inside. He thought they should move his family and sister to safety. Gams urged them to escape, and Rodaz, determined, said the wagon was ready with supplies. They all climbed into the wagon while Gams protected them. As it started moving, monsters appeared, and Gams told Rodaz to get back on. He quickly killed the monsters and joined them as the wagon sped away. Gams said part of the northwestern wall had collapsed, so they might escape through there. Rodaz was horrified to see the entire town burning, with destruction everywhere. Tears ran down his cheeks as he watched their once beautiful home in flames. After escaping the town, Carol asked her mother if they would be able to return. Sadly, her mother said probably not, but reassured her that new places held new experiences. Kem smiled and said they were saved thanks to divine protection, and that the god of fate was guiding them. Later that day, a courier arrived at Yoshio's home and delivered a small package. In the present, Rodaz was working hard to improve his fighting skills, with Gams training him. But eventually, Gams told Rodaz he wasn't suited for combat and should leave fighting to him and Malice. Rodaz, saddened, admitted he thought any extra strength would help, but now realized he didn't know his limits. He apologized for wasting Gams' time, and Yoshio noticed how strict Gams could be. After dinner, Layla mentioned they were running low on fruits and asked Gams to gather more during his patrols. Carol eagerly raised her hand, saying she wanted to help him too. Rodaz looked surprised at her excitement. She said she hadn't been allowed outside since moving to the cave. Rodaz reminded her that as the special day approached, the monsters grew stronger and it became too dangerous to go outside. But Carol smiled and said she'd be fine with her big brother and would collect lots of tasty fruits. Hearing that, her father slammed the table in anger and scolded her, telling her to listen. Everyone was shocked, and Carol's eyes filled with tears. She ran off crying, shouting that she hated him, before locking herself in a room. Yoshio watched Rodaz's behavior and reflected on his own helplessness. He thought that all he could really do was give the villagers hope through prophecies, but he knew that wouldn't solve their problems. With only 214 fate points, he considered using a miracle like summoning hunters. But it was risky since he didn't know what kind of people might appear. The safest option, he thought, was summoning a golem, since he could control it and ensure it wouldn't harm anyone. But he needed 700 points and had only 10 days left. He briefly considered borrowing money, but he was too ashamed to ask his dad or sister. He also wondered if he could sell the tributes he'd received, but knew it would take time to find buyers. Yoshio grew stressed, struggling to find a solution, when the idea of getting a part-time job crossed his mind. It seemed like the easiest path, but he had never worked before. He remembered going to an interview once, but his pride got in the way. He wanted only high-paying jobs with good benefits, and in the end, he got nothing. His father had even tried helping him through connections, but Yoshio refused and embarrassed his family. That had been 10 years ago, and he had not worked a single day since. Sometimes he thought about getting a job, but fear always stopped him, the fear of trying and being rejected. But now he no longer wanted to disappoint anyone. As these thoughts settled in, he realized it was time for him to change. If he didn't change now, he might never change at all. He wondered if he could find work that paid at the end of the month so he could gather enough money to help the villagers. But finding short-term work nearby was difficult, and not having a driver's license made it even harder. He considered all possibilities, but obstacles made finding a quick solution nearly impossible. Rhodas tried to comfort Carol, but she refused to talk to him. Layla gently suggested giving her some time. Seeing their struggle, Yoshio felt the weight of their emotions. Determined to act, he put on his jacket, deciding he needed a job magazine since he didn't want to rely on the internet. He took his bicycle and rode out to buy a magazine with job listings. When he returned home, his mother noticed and was happy to see him taking initiative. She warmly welcomed him, pleased that he had gone out. Yoshio hurried to his room, excited to look through the job pages. While flipping through the listings, his mother called that dinner was ready. He went downstairs and joined the family for dinner. His sister was back as well. She seemed surprised, asking if she wasn't supposed to return yet, but he smiled and welcomed her. She looked a little confused by his sudden friendliness. As they all sat down, their mother unexpectedly announced that Yoshio was considering getting a job. Sayuki smiled awkwardly while their father commented, "So, you finally found some motivation." Yoshio quickly clarified that he only wanted a part-time job because he needed some extra money. But his father said, "The reason doesn't matter. It's good. You're motivated now." Yoshio was surprised. He thought his father would insist on a full-time job. Sayuki then teased him, saying he'd changed recently and wondering if he had a girlfriend. Their mother laughed, joking that Yoshio didn't seem very popular, leaving him wondering why she responded on his behalf. Yoshio noticed that Sayuki had called him Big Brother, which made him happy. His father then asked if his decision to work was related to the village, surprising Yoshio with his insight. Yoshio admitted it was, explaining that he felt guilty receiving so much from the villagers without giving anything in return. Sayuki looked confused, being the only one who didn't understand the context. Their mother reminded them not to talk while eating and told them to finish first. Sayuki agreed and asked her mother to explain afterward. After dinner, Yoshio sat in the garden when his father approached and asked if he had found a job yet. Yoshio said he had found 3 possibilities and planned to call them the next day. His father asked whether he was looking for short-term work, and Yoshio confirmed, explaining that he had important business until the end of the month, so he could only work temporarily. When his father asked if there were any specific requirements, Yoshio said he wasn't good with customer service and preferred physically demanding jobs. His father then offered to reach out to a friend, saying that no matter how old Yoshio got, he would always be his father. There was nothing wrong with accepting help from family. Hearing this, Yoshio thought back to the past when his father tried to help, but he had refused those chances. His father said that if Yoshio truly wanted to achieve something, he should use all support available, including family. This made Yoshio think of Rhodas, who tried to help Carol but was pushed away, much like Yoshio had once done. After considering it, Yoshio agreed with his father. His father immediately called a friend to arrange something for him. Then he told Yoshio to change into more flexible clothing. Yoshio said he had a tracksuit, and his father told him to get ready and be back in 30 minutes. Yoshio worried since he hadn't prepared a resume, but his father assured him it wouldn't be needed yet, since his friend was helping. Yoshio quickly returned to his room, shaved, and changed his clothes.